Hi everyone. My name is Tásος Γκουβίτσας. I have a show. I have a YouTube show called Geek the Greek. And we have the pleasure of having with us the president of Top Cow, Matt Hawkins. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, everyone. Thanks.
So,
golf clap.
So, it's your first time you said in Greece, right?
Yeah, I got here last night and haven't really had a chance to tour around, but so far I'm enjoying it.
Great. So, you like our con, our AthensCon?
Yeah, it's, I've been to a bazillion cons. It's my 25th year doing this. I do about 20 shows a year, so I don't, quick math, what's that, 400 or 500 of these things, maybe, no, more than that.
Yeah, how do you like ours?
It's pretty cool, actually. I like how it's spaced out. There's more space here. I think one of the things I noticed with most conventions is the aisles are too narrow. Mm-hmm. Like, there's not room to walk through. Like, San Diego Comic-Con is the worst. I hate that fucking show. It's so many people and it's so crowded. Like, you can actually walk around here. It's kind of nice.
It's funny that you say that because for some of us, this is a dream to go to San Diego Comic-Con, but you're like, San Diego.
San Diego Comic-Con is I think it's a fun show to go to once. There are hundreds of thousands of people there, and it's so crowded. Like, if you just look down on the floor, imagine 100 times the people in the same space. It's very crowded. It's hard to walk around. Every time someone stops and cosplay to take a picture, everyone starts getting angry. So it's I just did my 25th consecutive Comic-Con. I've been doing since '92 when I started.
Wow.
And I've never been to a comic convention as a fan.
Really?
I've never been to one. I've been to thousands.
Even if you go, even if you go at one, they're just gonna stop you and like ask you questions, right?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
So, I have my notes here with me. So, as you said, you've been in the industry for more than 20 years, right? And you've been at Image from the start and Top Cow, right?
Well, I started in April of '92 and worked with Extreme Studios, Rob Liefeld's company originally, until '96. Mm-hmm. And then I was part of a company called Awesome Comics, which was actually Ian Churchill, Jeff Loeb, Alan Moore, Steve Scrose.
So it was like a reunion here.
Yeah, Mike. Just tons of people. And Awesome was a one-year thing, and then it went under too. And then in '98, I self-published a book called Lady Pendragon through Image Comics. Yeah. And then in later '98, I started working at Top Cow, and I've been there for 20 years.
And you started as an editor, right?
Yes, started as an editor, publisher running the line of comics. And so on the business side, I deal with hiring and firing of artists and writers and creators and picking what books we publish. Yeah. I deal with the finance and the legal. And all that kind of stuff.
But tell us a bit about your journey. You started as an editor, then you became a writer, right? And then all the way to the top to president of the company.
I've always kind of written somewhat on the side because it was just kind of for fun. I started writing like more seriously in 2011. And I write three or four books a month now. Wow. So it's pretty, I just finished my first novel. So that'll be coming out through Tor, and so I've been doing a lot of stuff.
Pretty busy, like managing a company and also writing all that stuff and a novel and 3 to 6 titles a month. Wow.
Well, you can do it. I think it just takes discipline. You need to. I write for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I get my work done. So I write from like 8 to 12, and then I go eat lunch. Then I go to the office. So I have an office at home, so I work from my home in the morning, and then I go into the office, Top Cow's offices in the afternoon. I take my meetings, I work with people there, deal with the money and all the other crazy stuff, and then pick up my kids and go home.
Wow. Yeah, but okay, can you tell us a bit about how it is to start from scratch and then move up to being a president of a company?
I mean, the thing about, I don't know how the industry is here in Greece or really how well
there is none.
Oh. In the United States, there are probably, just as a stat, there are about 300 professional comic book writers that get paid to write comics. I'm one of them. There are about 900 people in the NBA. That's the Basketball Association. So there's 3 times more people that play basketball professionally than there are that write
writers.
comic books.
Wow.
So there's not a lot of opportunity as a writer. There are far more artists, because the problem with writers is we live a long time and we can write a lot of books a month. You know, like if you want to become a comic book writer, you're competing with guys like me, Mark Waid, Kurt Busiek. We all write 4 books, 5 books a month, and their careers last 30, 40, 50 years.
Nice.
You know, it's a long time.
Yes, of course.
So, you know, if you're in the if you're a sports player, your career is usually what, 5 years? A lot of turnover.
Yeah.
So, honestly, the best way to break into comics in any format is just to self-publish and do webcomics today.
Okay.
And build a following. Because as a publisher, I can say when I'm looking to hire people, because it is a business, I know we all look at comics as sometimes not being a business, but it's a business. I have to sell a certain number of units to break even. And if I can't break even, I can't continue publication. So I usually will look at an artist or writer, and part of what I'm looking for is, does this person have following? You know, if you have 25,000 Twitter followers, I'd be more interested in working with you
than someone
who doesn't.
Yeah.
You know, so all those things matter. And, you know, so it's all about mitigating risk and trying to figure out how to make money. I mean, it's a hard business to make money. There are, when I started in comics in 1992, there were only about 300 books a month being published in English. Today, there's almost 4,000 a month.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, and so the weird thing about that is if you look at the number of comic book stores in the United States, when I started in 1992, there were close to 15,000 comic book stores. Okay, today, there's over 10 times the volume of comics being published, but there's only about 2,000 comic book stores. So it's gone from 15,000 to 2,000. Now you have alternative methodologies like digital comicsology.
Yeah.
People buy trades on Amazon. So there's a lot of different ways to buy and read the material. So.
Great. Okay, so aside from the comics, which, okay, you've been in like for over 20 years, you're also a physicist. You've been to Caltech, right?
Do what?
Caltech.
No, UCLA. Caltech
sorry.
was always my dream. I never actually went to Caltech. I did some work with Caltech,
Okay.
but I never actually attended Caltech.
So, but you love physics.
Yes.
But you chose comics over physics, right? Or do you also do that? I mean,
I
you must have a clone somewhere or something.
When Image Comics started, and I was hired, I was working on my master's degree at UCLA in physics, and I finished it. But comics were doing so well that I never went into science. So my dad is an engineer for the U.S. military, or was. He's retired now. My sister was an astrophysicist. So it's kind of the family. I'm the black sheep of the family.
You're the black sheep because you're the president of one of the major comic book companies. Okay.
Yeah, but my family is very science heavy,
yeah.
and academia was important. So the fact that I'm doing cheesy entertainment is I'm the black sheep of the family.
But you can see that in your comics. I mean, like in most of the stuff you write, it's a lot of science-oriented and military heavy.
Right.
And that was because of your father, right?
A lot of it, I grew up on military bases. I was born on a military base, and for the first 16 years of my life, I lived on various military bases all over the world. So, yeah, it was very influential in my thought process. You know, I was a kid in the 70s. I was born in 1969, and in the 70s, when I was a kid living on these military bases, we would do these drills for nuclear war, you know, and they would always say, and see, I was a smart kid, so when they would say, hey, get underneath your desk, I'd be like, that's going to stop a nuclear bomb? They would tell you to get down on the ground. I'm like, yeah, there's really no point. If there's a nuclear bomb, it doesn't matter if I'm under my desk or not.
Or like 6 feet under.
But, yeah.
So, and you were raised in many countries, like?
I lived briefly in Germany and in the Philippines.
Oh, weird. You must pick up some. Do you understand any German or Philippine?
Well, Ramstein Air Force Base in Germany is a weird place because you don't really ever leave the base, so you might as well have been in the U.S. It's just a bunch of U.S. servicemen.
Oh, okay.
And
So
you don't
were
leave.
only,
Yeah.
you were not allowed to leave. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't allowed to leave as a kid. I was pretty young. So in the Philippines, we went around. That was kind of fun.
Nice.
That base is gone now. It was there years and years ago. I don't remember what the name of it was.
Okay. So I'm asking all this stuff because it amazes me that you have love for physics, and you've also produced many things from video games to films, right?
Yeah.
But still you choose comics. You say, I'm a comic book guy, right? So tell us a bit about, video games and films that you've produced.
Yeah, I worked on the Wanted video game, which came out from Gren and from Universal back when the Wanted movie came out. I've worked on both Darkness video games, and there's another game in there.
Amazing games.
Yeah. But I love video games. I love working on. I wrote 2 seasons of the Power Rangers. I don't know if you watched the Power Rangers.
Yeah, but we're having Steve Cardenas.
He's much later. I worked on Space Patrol Delta. It was called SPD, and another one called Magi Rangers. This 2003 and 4, I think it was. And I wrote a bunch of episodes for that. Here's the reason why I like comics. I have the greatest job ever because I can write anything I want, and no one can tell me no. When you're working as a writer on a TV show, there are a lot of people that tell you no.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that say no. And the thing that irritates me about writing in film and TV and video games is you work on stuff and they give you feedback, and a lot of times you're getting feedback from non-creative people, and the feedback sucks.
Yeah.
And it's these notes that are like not very helpful, and it's because they're not creative people. Like I have, when I say I can write anything I want, I have my own people that I go to with my ideas that I get their feedback from.
That you trust.
Yes, I trust them. They're smart.
Plus you're the president, so they can't say anything to you.
And they give me good advice. And Mark Silvestri's one of those, and he and I bounce ideas back and forth all the time. And so I really respect his feedback, because he thinks very visually as an artist. And so we've worked on a lot of stuff together over the last 2 decades. And but it is, when you work in, the thing is, you work in film and TV, you get paid a lot more. But it's just not as enjoyable. I mean, it's very frustrating.
Okay. You mean frustrating because of all the other people that are getting involved in your work?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's also the problem with what these other people are that give you notes is they're hired to do that. That's part of their job, is to give you notes. Therefore, they feel obligated to give you notes, even if you don't need them. Whereas the people that I use, that I pay to get my feedback from, and same with me, when I'm reading another writer's work, my preference is that, hey, this is great. That's always my preference. Okay. I don't really want to give someone notes, but I will if I feel like it's needed. And I think that that's kind of one of the important things about it. So when someone is required to find something to say, they're just looking for something to say, and it might not work. I've received notes. We received notes on Witchblade on the film, where from an executive. This is 20 years ago, and
2001,
he's like,
right? 2001.
No, it was before that. We were developing Witchblade as a film before it was the TV show. This was a movie.
Remember.
Yeah, it was TNT, the TV show. And but before that, we were developing it as a film at New Line Cinema, and one of the executives was like, "I love this, but we need to make it a guy." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Well, this Witchblade, can we call it Warlock Blade, and we'll just make it a guy?" And I'm like, "Fuck you!" I mean, I was like, "Yeah, do you even know this is the property? It's the brand. It's this woman. Fuck off."
Witchblade as a guy.
But those are the kind of notes you get from people that don't know.
Yeah, I understand. I remember with Yangtze Butler, that was one of the first actually TV. After it was a film, it was a TV series, right?
Yeah. No, it was a 2-hour film with her, which was essentially the pilot for the TV show. I worked on that, and that was it was ahead of this whole comic book TV arc. In fact, I think it was a little too far ahead of its time.
It was. Yeah. I mean, it was one of the first comic book shows
Yeah.
that were on TV, right?
I think if it came out today, it would definitely pick up a bigger audience.
Definitely, and it was. I agree with what you say because it was so dark and gritty,
Yeah,
like these Netflix series are right now.
yeah.
So it really was ahead of its time.
Yeah, it was. That was a fun series, and it actually was doing really well in the ratings. That's one of the things you deal with in entertainment is you go through enough things and you get frustrated. I mean, I get. It's hard enough to get a TV series on the air. Then it's doubly hard to try to get people to watch it. Witchblade was doing well. I mean, it was doing very well in the ratings, and the reason why it was canceled, famously, is if you look it up, is the lead actress kind of went into rehab. And she disappeared from the set in the middle of the second season, so they canceled the show. And that sucks because we had a really good show that was doing really well, and you know, shit happens.
Everyone liked it, critically acclaimed.
Yeah.
Um,
That's why I did the Japanese anime after that. There was the Witchblade Japanese TV show.
which also was amazing.
That was 2003. Yeah.
Too short. If I would have liked it to be longer, like to continue.
Yeah, I think they did it intentionally as a one-off. Gonzo, the company that did it, went through, I think, some sort of financial restructuring after it was done. So sometimes it's just different problems.
Yeah, and it's amazing because it would never cross my mind, but Witchblade as an anime, it works so well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the nice thing about the Top Cow universe and the characters like Witchblade and the Darkness is they're about artifacts. I mean, the Witchblade is a gauntlet, so the gauntlet can be put on any woman's hand. So, like we're relaunching Witchblade now with a new bearer. So there's a new Witchblade comic that comes out
now, right in December, right?
Yeah, in 2 weeks. I have a copy of it down at the booth if you want to look at it.
Can we have one?
Yeah, it looks great.
Can you give us one?
Awesome. You can have it. I only have it's not out yet. Just don't post it on the internet.
Okay.
So the nice thing about the Witchblade in the Darkness is it's a generational bearer. So you can have you can introduce a new character with that gauntlet and still call it the Witchblade, which is harder because you can't really do that with, say, Superman.
Yes.
You know, Superman is a person or an alien, not a person, but he's like one person. You know, one guy.
Yeah.
So you can't have another one. You could, I guess, Kryptonian. It's a bad example, but
no, it's not a bad example. You're right, but still, the fans won't Sarah Pezzini.
Right.
Yeah.
Sarah Pezzini was a human that used this artifact called the Witchblade. She was the longest running bearer, but now we have a new bearer.
Ah, for the relaunch, it's a new bearer.
It's a new bearer.
Right, great. I hope a woman.
Yeah, it's a woman.
Like you said, not Warlock Blade. Okay, so can you tell us a bit about the Top Cow talent hunt?
Now, the Top Cow talent hunt originated about 6 years ago. We're always looking for artists. So if any of you are artists, please come show me your work. We're always looking for artists. What happens in comics a lot is an artist will work for a while, then they'll go into animation, video games, or something else. And that's pretty common. You won't see lifelong comic artists. Or they'll go and they'll do something else for a while, then they'll come back. But there's usually a window of working with good artists, and so we're always looking for those artists. The Top Cow Talent Hunt was designed specifically to find new artists. Mark Silvestri and I were sitting there one day, and we were like, hey, it's too bad there's nothing like this for writers. Yes. And then I remember telling him, I'm like, yeah, that's because it'd be a pain in the ass to have to read all those things and then go through them. And because it's very easy to look at someone's artwork. I can look at someone's artwork and in about 15 seconds tell whether I want to work with them or not.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, if I was just going to read this piece of paper.
Check their Twitter.
Yeah.
Like how many followers. Your art is good.
It takes a long time to read something.
Yeah.
You know, and then it takes a long time to think about that something. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, reading a submission from a writer takes a long time. It's much more difficult. So we actually decided, as kind of on a whim, to add the writing part to the talent hunt. And this is 6 or 7 years ago when we first started it. And the feedback was extraordinary because there's so many people that want to be comic book writers, but they don't know how to get in.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're an artist, you can self-create your own little thing and put it up on DeviantArt or whatever, and you can start to build a following that way. It's very difficult as a writer to have an opportunity to be seen. So we created the Top Cow Talent Hunt, and that has both writers and artists. And the way it works is we get about 1,500 submissions. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So the most we've ever got was a little over 2,000 in 1 year. And we have, so the editors that work for me will go through all of it. And they'll weed it down to like the top 50 or top 100 of the writers and the artists. Then I'll read all the written ones and I'll pick the winner. And then Mark Silvestri will go through all the artists and he'll pick the winner.
Nice.
So that's how it works.
Is it too late to enter now for 2017?
No, in fact, I think this will be the last one we do for a while because, like I said, these are kind of a pain to do because there's so many. And but the deadline for the 2017 cutoff is December 15th.
Yes.
So there's 2 more weeks. That's enough time to do something. The rules are online. Just you can Google Top Cow Talent Hunt 2017, and it'll take you to the rules document. So you can enter as a writer or as an artist. There's a very specific way you have to do it, though. You can't just send in your submission.
And there's no limitation which country you're from or something like that. Any guy from here can, or girl.
Anyone from Greece can participate, and the winner can come from Greece. The one caveat is it has to be an unpublished writer or author or artist. So if you've done work for a major company in Greece, you would be disqualified.
Okay. I don't think we have major companies here.
Well, then you're fine. So usually the rule we have is the top 5 companies from a country. But if the industry is really small, then you're right. It may not matter.
Yeah, it's very small here, almost non-existent.
Yeah.
I remember you had the pilot season, but you don't have that anymore.
No.
Because I really enjoyed that. I remember I used to vote.
Right. We were trying different things. I mean, the idea of if you don't know what pilot season was, that was our, we would have 4 or 5 new creations. We would publish a one-shot, like an introduction, like a pilot for a TV show. And then fans would come on and vote for which one would win. And it was an experiment. Again, sometimes you do these things like pilot season or talent hunt, and you try to figure out how to make them work successfully. The problem is a lot of times they become more trouble than they're worth. Okay. You know, I mean, with the pilot season, we'd have a lot of people complain about not finishing the other stories. Yeah. Like we would do 5 one-shots, and there would be an introduction, and then we'd only do one of those 5 as an actual series. And then people would come up to me at shows like this and complain about not having one of the other series continued. So
I understand, because I remember a lot of great titles that didn't get to continue, and it was frustrating. But with Talent Hunt, it's not like that. So.
Right. Well, as a company, you don't want to do things that make your audience angry.
Yeah.
You know, so if someone gets angry at Top Cow or gets angry at me for any reason, there's a pretty good chance they'll stop reading our stuff, and we don't want that.
Mm-hmm. So. Okay. So we talked about the Witchblade, which is amazing, but my personal favorite from Top Cow is the Darkness.
Darkness.
Yeah. Do you have anything planned for the Darkness now?
We are launching a new The Darkness comic book series in October of 2018.
New Darkness or
New Darkness.
Jackie
Estacado will be in the series, but he will not be the Darkness.
Ah, okay.
He'll be an older.
I thought that when there's a new Darkness, the old one just dies.
Well, you'll have to read it and see.
Okay.
It will make sense.
But do we have anything for a new video game or a new film, maybe?
Well, The Darkness has been in various forms of development for film. I think we've optioned that as a film 10 times. Yeah. There have been multiple scripts have been written for a Darkness movie that's never been made.
It's such a bummer because it's such a great concept. Like
right.
a gangster that becomes like an anti-hero.
Right.
Yeah.
I always call it's like a supernatural Sopranos, if that TV show, you know.
It actually is, that.
So, and that's how I've always kind of pitched it. The films, you know, we don't make movies. I've produced films, but it's using other people's money. I don't have $100 million of my own money to go make a movie, or I would. So, you know, it really, same thing with video games is we don't make video games. We make comic books that we then sell into these other things, and then we have to work with these other people that do that. And a lot of times, you know, I think we've had 150 projects optioned since I started.
Yeah.
We've had 4 of those actually made.
Oh, okay.
So 4 out of 150.
Yeah.
It's
I
not a
understand.
great success ratio.
But that's usually how it works, right?
Yeah, it's getting better now. I think there are fewer things being optioned by film studios because they have less discretionary money. So they're just not optioning stuff just on a whim. So.
Okay. So, but you don't have anything else. Okay, you told us about the Witchblade relaunch and the Darkness relaunch. Do you have anything other planned right now for the future, the immediate future?
For film and TV?
Or for film or TV or for comic books? I mean, major.
Well, we're always, we're relaunching. 2018 is actually going to be a really good sort of retro, kind of original Top Cow year because in December, next couple weeks, we're launching a new Witchblade series, which will be ongoing. In March, we're launching a new Cyberforce series, which was the first Top Cow title.
Yeah, I remember.
In July, there'll be a new Aphrodite 9 series, which is an older school Top Cow project that I wrote.
Yes.
And then in October, we'll be launching a new The Darkness series. So a lot of the original sort of better-known Top Cow properties are being relaunched in 2018. So we're looking forward to that.
Not Fathom?
Fathom's owned by Aspen. We don't own Fathom.
Ah, you don't?
That was when Mike Turner split off from Top Cow to create his own company. Fathom was his creator-owned thing, so that went with him.
Oh, okay. So, want to tell us a little bit about your more recent work, like Samaritan or Golgotha?
I'm sorry, what?
Like your more recent work, like Samaritan?
Oh, yeah. No, I've written, like I said, I've written a ton of different projects. Samaritan, which is called The Tithe, is a new book that just came out. The 3rd or 4th volume just came out. I work on a book called Think Tank, which is my personal favorite, which is, of all the books I do, that one gets published internationally the least. And it's
But it's your favorite.
It's my favorite.
It's your baby.
It's my personal favorite, and I actually have these cards at my booth, or I'll give them to you here if you want one, which has a PDF of the first volume. I think
nice.
there's a misunderstanding of the book, I think, because it is about the U.S. military-industrial complex and about the U.S. military and how the weapons get designed and built, because I grew up with that, and my dad was part of that. But I'm actually vehemently making fun of it. And
it's essentially a woman going up against the military contractor, right?
Yeah, it's not a celebration of U.S. military power. Woo, that's not what it is. And I think when people just look at it, they think that's what it is. So, Symmetry is another book I did. Lady Pendragon, The Tithe. A lot of these books have been published in a number of international languages. We have a global license with Panini, the Italian publisher, who has rights to all that we do outside of English.
Oh.
So
okay.
they take and publish our stuff all over the world.
Nice.
So, but I think the only book I've had published in Greek is Symmetry. Symmetry, yeah. Is a book that is a utopian sort of science fiction thriller.
Still nice because we don't have many comic books in Greek, and actually, us as readers, we prefer. Sometimes it's not that good, but we prefer to read in English, you know,
right?
Because, in the original language.
Well, the funny thing about some of this stuff is I actually can read and write in French. And
really?
Yeah. And so when I get the French translations of my work, I'll read it. And
you don't like them?
No, they don't. They change stuff. No, it's really.
But that's how translation works, you know.
Well, no, I know, but it's interesting. Sometimes they'll actually change stuff that affects the story. Yeah. Like I was reading one of these French books, and I'm like, wait, what? Like they changed the relationship. Like this guy in the story I had written, this was his girlfriend, and in the story they changed it. It was his sister.
What?
And I'm just like, which was weird because they kissed later in the book, and so.
Matt Hawkins is a pretty edgy guy.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they like that stuff there.
Maybe. Yeah, they're French.
I love the French.
Okay, so I also liked very much to read Golgotha because this is such a good concept. It hadn't even crossed my mind. Like,
Right.
There's a team. You say it better.
Golgotha is about a colonization of another world, but the idea of it is there's a guy who decides he wants to leave everything and start over and start a new world And so he makes this decision and takes this team with him, and they travel 88 years through cryosleep to get to this other world to start it. The problem is a few years after they left, scientists developed a faster way to travel.
Like warp drive.
Right.
Huh?
And the use of quantum entanglement basically was sort of what I was using it for. And quantum entanglement is one of those things I've actually studied pretty heavily. Do you understand quantum entanglement?
I don't, but I know what it is. But I don't really understand. I'm not a physicist.
The interesting thing is you may not realize this, but we can actually teleport things today. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Teleportation exists right now. It's through a thing called quantum entanglement. I've seen it done at MIT in Boston. Really? And you can teleport something from one room to another room. Here's the problem, and this is the most fascinating part of that, what I call quantum entanglement teleportation, is in effect, what you're doing is you're scanning a copy of it, you're disintegrating it, then you're reintegrating it over here and rebuilding it like with a 3D printer, okay? It's not the same thing.
Yeah, it's not
so
actually, yeah.
If you were going to do it to yourself, you would create, in essence, a clone of yourself. It wouldn't be you, because you'd be dead.
Yeah.
And your clone would go on as you, which kind of defeats the point of it, right? I don't want to die just so someone else can go have fun as me. But that's what quantum entanglement teleportation. Quantum entanglement is basically the idea that atoms are connected. And so I can do something here that affects something on the moon. And it's how we'll be able to communicate in real time over the longer period. It's really complicated, but it's a fun thing. It was actually discovered by Einstein in the 30s, and he couldn't figure out what it was because he was looking at what they called spooky action from a distance. Mm-hmm. They would see when they were looking at subatomic particles that you would see this electron here, but you would see the same electron here. And so how can the same electron be in two spaces at the exact same time? Well, it didn't make sense, so it broke the laws of physics. So we're getting into physics things. This is a comic book show, I'm sorry.
It's okay, we like it.
But back to the story, Gotha. The idea was with Gotha, they figured the scientists developed a faster way to travel. So when this guy and his crew, they get to this other world, they've already built the colony. They were supposed to get there and build a colony from scratch. When they get to this other world, the colony is already there. His grandson is the one that built it and runs it, and they don't want them there. So imagine you give up your whole life to travel to another world to start from scratch, and you get there, and what you were supposed to do has already been done, and they don't even want you there. And so it's kind of a shitty thing, but it was good for story.
Yeah, and they're also more advanced than you. So what can you do? Okay, so you also told me earlier before we started this that we talked a bit about Warframe. You're doing the Warframe comic book,
right?
And you told me that you play the game, right? Can we see you in the game? Can we?
Yeah. No, I don't game as much as I could. I have two teenage sons.
It's understandable, man.
They tend to dominate the gaming consoles, and my wife plays games too. So, and I've work to do. So I have to pay for the stuff for them to play it, you know. But no, I was a pretty heavy gamer. I played World of Warcraft for 10 years, and played EverQuest, and I've always played video games, you know, since I saw Pong at Sears in 1976. I actually saw the first game when it was there. So I've watched video games evolve. It's been kind of cool in my lifetime. But Warframe I do play. Anybody play Warframe? Yeah. We did a comic. The first 2 issues are out. I think digitally they're free from Digital Extremes. But it's a fun game. And if you buy the paid version of the comic, there's actually codes in there for free currency in game.
Oh, nice. Skins and stuff, just cards. Okay, so I don't know if we have much time more, so we're gonna go to questions from the audience.
Okay.
If you have some, okay, sir. Okay. Do we have a mic? Let me bring.
You got a mic?
No, it's okay.
Oh. There we go.
Good day. My name is Dimitris. I started writing a comic, but I'm not too good at drawing. So because of the absence of the industry here in Greece, I'm trying to make it a novel, a book. So I am not so sure how to publish it on my own. I am writing it in English so that it could be published outside of Greece. And I wanted to ask you about how, if there is anything that could help me, any advice that could help me
Self-published, right?
to self-publish my work, or I could try Top Cow's talent hunt.
Do it.
So let me make sure. Your question is you wrote a prose, like a novel? The novel or a comic book? A book or a comic book?
I was trying to make it a comic book, but now I'm trying to make it a book.
As a book. Okay. The one thing I will tell you is I recommend that because, especially if you don't have artists, the novel is actually the only pure writing form. As a writer, a novel is the only thing that you'll ever have 100% control over. If you think about that, because what you write is what appears on the page. You know, if you write a comic, you're working with an artist. They might change things. If you write a film or a TV show or a video game, I guarantee you it gets changed. I've written TV. I've seen stuff get changed. There was an episode of the Power Rangers I wrote where they did not use a single thing I wrote, and yet I was still credited as the writer, which kind of pissed me off because it was shitty, you know. You know, the hardest thing to do is to get someone to try your work. Part of the reason why I'm here is I've never been to Greece, and I am here, honestly, more to promote myself and my work than to help you promote yours, but it's fine. It's because I don't have much of an audience here either. And so part of it is getting stuff. How do you get someone to try your work? Here's the shitty part. You got to give it away for free. I mean, the thing is, no one knows who you are. No one's probably going to, you think about how many thousands of things they have options of reading. Are they going to read your book or Neil Gaiman's new book? You know, I mean, that's just, so if you got to pay $3 or $4 or euros, €5, I don't know, what's a book cost here, 5, 10 euros?
No, it could cost like from 5 to like 20 or something.
To 20?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. If someone has to pay for something, they usually want to know in advance that they're going to like it. Okay, if they don't know who I am or they don't know who you are, they need a reason to try it. Part of the reason I come to these shows is because I stand down and I'm friendly and I smile and shake hands all day, and people are like, oh, he's a nice guy, I'll try his book. But setting up at conventions like this is a good way to do it. As a prose novelist, you can actually, through Kindle, you can put it up. You can put up like the first chapter or 2 or 3 for free. You know, I think the good thing about prose is you can give away the first 40 or 50 pages for free, because then people can sample it and see if they like it, and then you give them the option to buy it. Are you familiar with a book called Wool? W-O-O-L. It's a very famous self-publishing guy in the United States who started writing a book a chapter at a time. And what he did was he put up the first 6 chapters on Kindle for free, and then he started selling the chapters after that for 99 cents a piece. I think that guy's worth about $300 million now, because he built, and this is 10 years ago, in 10 years, he built a massive audience, and he did it by giving away the book for free, because you'll have someone that will try it if it's free. Someone will. Some people may not. But the second that someone that tries it likes it, then you have them telling someone else, oh, hey, I read this thing, it's really cool, it's free, you should check it out.
It's spreading.
What?
So it's spreading. The word is spreading. So the next one will read it, then they will talk about it on the internet.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really how the business has shifted in the U.S. as well. You'll see a lot of cheaply produced comics, like thick, like omnibuses that are like $20, $30 that have a bunch of different comics in it. Then you'll have a $100 hardcover. You know, and it's the same as kind of the music business. People get music for free now, right? You listen to the music for free, but then you pay to go see the concert. You know, so there's different ways. Trying to build an audience is very difficult. You know, and so sampling and friendly pricing is the way to go. It's hard to do because most people that want to be creative people aren't self-funded. Like, you know, they aren't sitting on tons of money. So the nice thing about digital is like this. If you look at this thing, it's actually a QR code for a PDF. So I just all I have to do is pay for the server cost. That's it. So what am I paying? I'm paying $10 a year to give away this first volume. I have 5 volumes of this book. I've given away probably 500,000 of these book little postcards at all the shows I've done over the last 10 years, and there's about a 2 or 3% transition rate for these the ones I give away to the people that actually download it, and then there's a fairly high, like 1 out of 2 that then will purchase the second volume, and so that's just it's just one sale at a time, you know. And I think also doing conventions is vitally important. You know, when people meet you and they see that you're a nice person and that you're not like a serial killer, you know, I think that usually means they're more inclined to try your work. So.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Thanks.
I want to ask you, how's the manga industry doing in America in comparison to the comic industry?
Your question is, how does the manga industry in the U.S. compare to the regular comic industry?
In the USA.
In the USA? The manga industry in the USA peaked in about 2008 and was doing huge volume. There was a company called Tokyo Pop that was publishing a lot of volume, and it sort of peaked then, and it's kind of come back down quite a bit, but it's still very strong. I think in the mid-2000s, the U.S. discovered that the people that were reading manga were mainly teenage girls, and so that's why you see a lot of stuff has transitioned. A lot of companies were trying to figure out how do you retain these teenage girls as they're 25, 35 to read comics, because it was a huge audience of which was primarily kind of untapped, because in the U.S. most of the comics, especially in the 90s and the 2000s, were read by men, and a lot of them were younger men, and a lot of the regular comics, I think the average age of a comic reader in the U.S. right now for mainstream is like 35. It's not young anymore, it's older, and it's because they've kind of grown with this material. And comics are expensive. I mean, you buy a comic, it's $4 or $5 US, and you can read it in 5 minutes. That's not a great use of your entertainment dollar, at least in the US. So the manga audience is I think manga worldwide is stronger than it is in the US. There's still a massive market for it, but it kind of peaked. It went from nothing. I mean, in like 1995, there was no manga audience. There was no manga market. There was some. It was mainly Dark Horse that put out a little bit of books, but it was more just reprints of some Japanese material. Now, a lot of the manga being done in the United States is being done by Americans, which is weird.
Americans?
Yeah, the question of authenticity goes in there, because I guess a lot of people want Japanese manga by Japanese. You know, so if that's what you want, like you want Shonen Jump or something like that, it really depends. You know, I've personally never been a huge consumer of manga, so I don't know as much about it. It's not what we do.
But everyone can become a mangaka, right?
What?
But everyone who wants to, he can become a manga artist.
Yes, I think that no longer is it as big of an issue as it used to be. Like I'm working with the one manga-esque artist I'm working with is Yishin Lee, Chinese, and she has actually done Japanese manga in Japan. So there's a weird area there where there's a bit of a crossover, but there still is a small part of that market that only wants Japanese authentic manga. But I think there's so much manga now that's being done by non-Japanese that it's more accepted than it used to be. So. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bueller?
Anyone else? You have a question, right? Can you pass the mic,
Yes, ma'am.
please?
Hello.
Hi.
You mentioned that there is a great deal of potential in the industry to further expand, and there is a great audience that even today, if I understood correctly, remains untapped. What would be your own ideas on how to reach this audience and how to bring them further to the comic book industry? do you have some ideas that you have yet to enforce, if you want to say, but you would like them to see?
Do you have any ideas that you want to enforce?
Do I have any ideas that I want to enforce? I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question. I'm sorry.
In order to reach a new audience,
Okay.
Do you have any methods that you would like to use?
Do we have methods we
evolve.
would like to use to reach a new audience?
Yes.
I don't know that we have any methods. We have lots of trial and error. I mean, whenever you try to reach a new audience, it's hard because you don't know that audience. Like, my readers are mainly men in their 30s and 40s who read the books I write. So I know that, and I tend to write for them because I have a comfortable living. You know, they're like my wife. I'm co-writing a couple books with my wife and doing some stuff that we're intentionally trying to reach a stronger female demographic. We did a book called Sunstone, which is about two women in an S&M relationship. It's turned out to be our most successful book in the last decade. And it was a shock to me. I did it as a favor to the artist, Stjepan Sejic, who also wrote the book, and who lives in Croatia. That's not far from here, right?
What?
Croatia?
Croatia? No, not very
far?
Not very far.
I might have to go see him this week. I've never been to his house. He says he lives right where they shoot Game of Thrones. So I want to go on the Game of Thrones tour. But sorry, segue. A lot of it's trial and error. You know, I mean, I don't. You know, how do we reach a mainstream romance audience? Well, Sunstone, for example, doesn't sell in the comic book stores in the United States very well at all. Like, doesn't sell at all. It's all through Amazon. Because women in their 30s and 40s who want to read this kind of content, they don't go to comic book stores. And so they're not used to going to comic book stores. They don't go in comic book stores. So what do? They go on Amazon and they buy it and it gets shipped to their house, you know, or they buy it digitally, you know. So that's the nice thing about digital and alternative distribution methods. It's one of the reasons why I've played with Kickstarter and Indiegogo too, is because you reach people you wouldn't otherwise reach. In many cases, when we try to reach a new audience, we'll try to hire someone that's already working in that market that has a pre-existing audience. Because when you're trying to reach a completely new audience, it's very hard, you know, because I'm now writing some romance fiction, which is very hard for a science fiction author. I have respect for romance writers because it's very easy to have a dragon fighting a spaceship look cool. Yes. That's very easy to make look cool. It's very hard to make a guy and a girl sitting at a table in an argument look interesting. You know, it's very difficult. So romance writing is very hard. So how do you appeal to a romance audience? Well, you work with romance authors or people that know what they're doing. And that's usually how we do it. So you're asking a question that if I knew the exact answer to it, I'd be vastly richer than I am. And I don't. So whenever you try to reach a new audience, like my think tank book has been promoted in science magazines. Like I had a write-up in Scientific American, which they've never done any write-ups on any Top Cow comic or, to my knowledge, any other comic book ever. So the fact that they did a write-up on my comic saying that they liked it because it was introducing scientific concepts to kids and stuff like this that could read it, that's what they wrote. I didn't correct them and say that kids don't read it. But, you know, press
didn't say what the target audience is.
Press is press. That's a very good question that I think we're always trying to figure out. You know, and sometimes you'd be surprised how many people that are in comics that have no clue what their audience even is. I think the reason I know better about what my audience is because I'm here at this show and I see who comes up and asks me to sign my books, and it's usually a 35-year-old guy. You know, so when I go with Stjepan Sejic, I'll see who comes up to sign his books, and the Sunstone books are always 30 to 40-year-old women, so you just kind of get a sense of it. I'm sure there's a bigger demographic split than that, but I do 20 conventions like this a year, so I'm doing one of these every other week. I'm somewhere doing a convention, and I see hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people, so you get kind of an idea of who your readership is that way. So
it was actually a very interesting question because I wanted to ask you before. You said that comic book writers normally write all their life, right? While comic book artists, they're into comics for a while, then they go do other stuff. And do you think it's easier for a writer to evolve, like we said, to evolve their writing to get a newer audience than it is for a comic book artist to evolve their sketches and...
Actually, I think it's harder for a writer to evolve for a new audience.
Oh,
I think it's
okay.
harder. Part of the reason why writers continue and stay in comics is because they're able to do both. Like when I was writing for TV, I was still writing comics because I can write a lot. An artist tends to be able to only do one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. Like I can write a comic book in 3 days. It takes an artist a month to draw it. So I can write 10 comics in the time it took that artist to draw one.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more time and availability to do other stuff. Like I can go work on a video game for a week and then go do a comic.
But you think it's harder for a writer to adapt to a new audience?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think from my personal experience and from working with writers I've worked with over the years, I think it is. It's also difficult for me because I'm so used to writing science fiction to transition to try to write romance. Oh my God, it's hard. You know, because it's a whole different thing. And I got to tell you, I encourage writers, though, to try to break out and do new things. Because over the last, like I said, couple of years, I've been trying to work with my wife and this other artist on doing more kind of romance fiction to fill this. And the reason I'm doing that is because we sell so many copies of Sunstone. And these people will come up, and like I said, they're usually women, and they'll ask me, well, what other books do you have like this? And we had none. I can't sell Think Tank to that person because she's not going to want it. So
but maybe she'll find out something other.
Right. So we do this book. Okay, you like Sunstone? We have this other book called Swing. We have this other book called Sugar. You know, these are like sex subcategories, sex positive books, mature audience readers, you know, you just live and learn. But what I could say is I believe that writing that romance fiction has made me a much better writer. Because when you're writing stuff that's about conversation only, then you have to really be good at it.
Yeah.
And
you got outside your comfort zone.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, it's easy to write a character like Aphrodite 9, which I wrote for a decade. I wrote that character for 10 years. She was just a badass ass kicker. I didn't really write her as a woman. I just wrote her as a war machine. You know what I mean? And she had elements of being a woman, but you wrote that as kind of a superhero. It's kind of a superheroic figure. You write her that way. And it does, honestly, it wouldn't have really mattered whether it was a man or a woman.
Yeah.
But when you're writing romance fiction, you can't do that. You know, you got to kind of focus. And 'cause if you read most Wonder Woman stories, over the last 50 years, the vast majority of them, the stories don't matter whether it was a woman or not.
Yeah.
It's irrelevant. It's just sort of there's a story and she happens to be a woman. But when you write stories that specifically gender-based, it's much harder to do, especially as a man writing a woman, which is why why I brought my wife in to co-write it, because I wanted to make sure it was authentic.
Oh, nice. Do we have anything else from the audience? Anyone wants to ask a question? Don't be shy.
All good.
No?
All good. I'm right down here in the special guest area. So if you have a portfolio you want to show me or you want to get any books signed, I have some free stuff too. You're welcome to come by.
Okay, thank you. You were amazing.
Thanks, man.
Do you have any more time left? Because I love talking to you.
Cool.
Do we have? No?
All good.
3 minutes. Okay.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. You were amazing. Best interview ever.
Awesome. Thanks
you.
so much.